So in this video, we are going to be breaking down what makes a book categorized as middle grade, young adult, new adult, or adult. I'm really enjoying doing videos where I kind of break down and dissect a subject, like my genre and subgenre breakdown video and my booktube terms video. I'm really enjoying doing stuff like this, so I asked you guys what video like this you wanted to see next, and this was one that got a lot of comments, so we are going to break down what makes a book young adult, adult, etc. And if you have any suggestions of other breakdown videos like this that you'd like to see me do, definitely leave some recommendations in the comments. But before we get into this video, a shout out to today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creators with over 25,000 classes in design, business, writing, language, and more. I personally use them for my Spanish, and I feel like I've grown a lot in my ability to communicate. And I've also used them for learning techniques to be able to read faster and more efficiently. Also, felt like I learned a lot. Premium membership gives you unlimited access to join all of their classes and communities, and the annual subscription is less than $10 a month. Plus, if you use my link in the description, your first 2 months are free. I love Skillshare and use them daily, and I highly recommend checking them out. So a common misconception. The reason a lot of people argue a lot about what if a book is YA or adult, that's the main category that gets a lot of discussion, is because a lot of people categorize these things based on what age the protagonist is. If the protagonist is 17 or 18, then that book is young adult. Well, not necessarily. The age of the protagonist is not necessarily an indicator of what age range this book is going to be. I'll get more into why the age of the protagonist is not necessarily an indicator for what age group this book a book is intended for. I'll get more into that later, as well as examples of books that do not fit, that would not work to use that as a defining feature. Now, I will say that for middle grade, primarily middle grade books do have a middle grade age protagonist. Young adult books do primarily have a young adult age protagonist. New adult books do typically have a new adult age protagonist, and adult books can have any age protagonist. But there are plenty of adult books that have younger protagonists, and they're still adult books. We'll discuss that more in a little bit. So what are the defining factors that make a book categorized into an age range? There are 2 defining factors. The first and the most important is the intended age of the audience, and the second is the themes explored. So let's start with middle grade. Middle grade is intended for readers of age 8 to 12 years old. The main theme for middle grade novels are completely centered around friends and family and the main character's relationship to those around them. It's mainly about a young child finding their place in the world. Young adult novels are intended for readers ages 12 to 18, though, fun fact, about 50% of young adult readers are above the age of 18. That's not a factor in this video. It's just a little factoid. The main theme for young adult books is coming of age. They're coming into themselves. Middle grade is about finding their place amongst their peers and their family, whereas young adult is about them becoming their own person. It may explore first love. It may explore rising up and becoming someone great in the world. It may be overcoming trauma or overcoming things that are happening around them, but it's all about becoming their own person. New adult is a category that was invented in 2009 as sort of a bridge category between young adult and adult books. The intended age range is primarily 18 to 24-year-olds, but some people even say 18 to 30-year-olds, and it primarily takes place amongst college-age people. It's more new experiences, first experiences, but it can also be second experiences, your second time falling in love, managing college, finding a new career. It's just kind of that I'm still figuring out how to become my own person and how to be an adult, but I still don't really know. One common theme for new adult is sexual exploration, and unfortunately, new adult kind of got this name and reputation about it, where everybody just considered it smut or erotica, when that's not the only thing that this category was doing. It ended up basically collapsing in on itself, and new adult sort of disappeared for a minute, and now quite a few authors and readers are trying to rebuild the new adult genre because young adult is getting older and more mature than it used to, and it's because there really is a need for this in-between young adult and adult category, but it's still not a functioning category, or at least not a well-functioning category, and so young adult is kind of getting muscles on it and trying to act older. We'll see if it ever becomes a category again. It's kind of in limbo at the moment, but that's what that is. And then adult is everything that hasn't been mentioned yet. Adult is intended for ages 25 plus, but obviously any of these categories can be read at any age. In fact, young adult is as new adult is. Young adult also hasn't been around all that long. The first young adult novel was The Outsiders, and its original publication date was 1967. So up until this point, up until young adult became a thing, teenagers were reading adult novels. And everybody survived. The frustrating thing about this is I have searched, dadgummit, for the themes explored in adult novels, and I came up with nothing. I cannot, for the life of me, find a definition of here's what makes a book adult. Like we have the intended age range and the themes for every other age category, but for adult, ain't no themes provided. So I guess adult is just means like it's I don't know. So it's very unsatisfying for me as a video maker that I don't have a nice, pretty explanation for the themes for adults as I do with the others. But now we're going to go into why just talking about age of the protagonist, it doesn't cut it when we're trying to categorize a book. So let's start with the Farseer trilogy. Book 1, Assassin's Apprentice, follows our protagonist who is middle grade age. I don't remember how old he is, but he's young. Throughout the entire book, he stays middle grade age. In book 2, as I understand it, I haven't continued with the series yet, but in book 2, he's young adult age. And in book 3, he's an adult. Does that mean that book 1 is middle grade, book 2 is YA, and book 3 is adult? No! This is an adult fantasy trilogy. Keep in mind that the themes of young adult, the themes of middle grade don't match what this book did, or rather what these books did. An example of a book that is frequently miscategorized is Nevernight. The main character, Mia, I believe, is 17 years old in Nevernight. But this is not a coming-of-age story, and Nevernight himself is extremely vocal on Twitter saying this is not a YA book, guys. He even talks about how he gets letters from angry parents saying that they gave their teenager his book and their teenager was not prepared for the content inside. That's not saying no teenager should read Nevernight by any means. Keep in mind that young adult starts as young as 13 or 14. So just because she's 17 doesn't make this a young adult novel. Another book that's commonly miscategorized, there isn't that, is The Bear and the Nightingale. I believe I've even called this one young adult because I thought it was. Our protagonist starts off very young, like 15, I think. And then in book 2, I think she turns 17 or 18 maybe. And then book 3, she's an adult. This is an adult series. Now, it doesn't really have any explicit scenes or explicit swearing or really anything that would make a parent really angry if their young teen read it, but it's not a coming-of-age story. She's not coming into herself and exploring the world. It has a different set of themes. Does it really matter that much? No, usually it doesn't. A lot of times these categories are just put on books by the publishers to help them market the book to the specific audience that they think will be most benefited by or most interested in the book. But like I mentioned earlier, 50% of YA readers are adults. And as I'm sure a lot of you guys can attest to, tons of young readers read adult novels. I'm sure a lot of you guys were reading adult novels as teens. Were you ruined? Were you scarred? Were you broken by it? No, you weren't. I mean, maybe you were, depending on which ones you read. So I do think it's important to correctly label our books, but at the same time, I don't think it's that important 99% of the time, because YA and new adult are still relatively new age categories anyway. We haven't had them that long. And realistically, the majority of the books that I read on my channel and recommend, I primarily read adult books, not because of any prejudice, just because it's what happens. I primarily read adult books, and most of the books that I recommend, I would recommend to anybody that wants to pick them up. There are a couple books like the Liza Locke Lamora that, you know, that one does feature some heavy swearing, so if you don't like it, if you don't think your kid's ready for it, you should know that. But everything else, it's not like an adult book can't be read by a teen, and it's not like a teen book can't be read by an adult. The main purpose for these categories is to help publishers put it into the hands of to market to the correct category, but anybody can pick them up that wants to pick them up. Anyway, I've gone a little bit off topic. The point of this video is what makes a book fit a certain age category. There you go. That's what makes them fit the intended age of the reader and the themes explored. The age of the protagonist, while it can be a very good indicator, it doesn't tell you everything. You really need to be looking at intended age and themes explored. You can also just Google what age category it's in, and the publishers, they do the work for you. They tell you. They have it on there. Don't look at Goodreads though, because the Goodreads shelves that books are on, these books are shelved by reviewers, not by publishers. And so Nevernight is shelved under YA. I believe so is Mistborn and A Darker Shade of Magic and City of Brass, which is also an adult book, if you didn't know. Publishers say so. Not that it matters, because it can be read by younger readers. It doesn't. Anyway, don't use Goodreads as your resource, because reviewers don't know what they're talking about a lot of times. Go by what the publisher said. Those are the classifications for what makes a book categorized in a certain age category. What are your thoughts? What are some books that you have considered are a different age category? Is this stuff you already knew or didn't know? I post videos every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. I will see you guys again soon. Bye.